NSFW. What is the scariest theory known to man? We are actually the most advanced beings in the universe right now. And the fear of invading aliens taking our planet for resources is actually just the fear of what we will become. As scary as this is, I think it's fun to think about. I like this one. Wikipedia.org. The general concept that we never really die in our perspective. Each time we encounter a situation where we may die, we continue on in a parallel universe where something happens that prevents our death. But we die in the original universe. Essentially, our consciousness lives on by transferring itself to a parallel universe where we continue to exist. So we effectively live forever. There is a theory which states that if ever anyone discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable. There is another theory which states that this has already happened. Douglas Adams. John Douglas, a former chief of the FBI's elite serial crime unit and author of Mindhunter, says, a very conservative estimate is that there are between 35 and 50 active serial killers in the United States at any given time. That, should we destroy civilization, there are not enough fossil fuels in easily reachable places for any subsequent society to achieve an industrial revolution. We mined most of it and the only stuff that's left requires modern technology to reach. We're all, she wrote. If we duck up, there's no coming back from it. Edit. People are asking. So here's a really interesting article on it. Ian Co. Edit 2. Since my inbox is flooded with people saying herder but fossil fuels renew. Please note the use of the word civilization and not intelligent life. I'm talking about the survival of humanity as we know it. Not the survival of intelligent life on Earth in general. I'm sure the lizard people will rule once we're gone. But I'm not talking about that. Or extinction. For me it's solipsism. Easiest way to explain it is with a quote from Wiki. Solipsism, the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist. As an epistemological position, solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind isn't sure. The external world and other minds cannot be known and might not exist outside the mind. As a metaphysical position, solipsism goes further to the conclusion that the world and other minds do not exist. Basically, every person you see, including family and friends, are possibly figments of your imagination and you can never know for sure. That any computer to be able to pass the Turing test would also be able to see that it would be a bad thing to do so. That there could be a machine right now that could act as a human but is also intelligent enough to know not to let us know it could. The brain in a vat theory. The brain in a vat is an element used in a variety of thought experiments intended to draw out certain features of our ideas of knowledge, reality, truth, mind and meaning. It assumes the following: that the brain is the origin of all consciousness. The brain operates on electrical impulses. External stimuli can affect the way the brain operates. Any external stimuli to the brain can be simulated to a degree that the brain cannot distinguish these simulated stimuli from natural stimuli. The point is that you could be a brain in a jar, being fed false impulses for your entire life by an external source. Or you, still a brain in a jar, could be hallucinating your entire life from lack of stimuli. There's a theory that our universe is in a false vacuum that will eventually collapse and completely destroy or ultimately alter our universe. That would mean that no matter how far we develop, no matter how many planets we'll settled, and no matter how many medical feats humanity will have accomplished, we would have a deadline where we would be forever deleted. Virtually all of mankind's fears, falling, spiders, etc., are based on things that were threatening to our ancestors. So keeping this in mind, why do so many of our images of monsters and demons look the same? That we live in a simulation. It's not hard to believe that one day we will be able to create a simulated world. Probably more than one. Maybe hundreds. Maybe our simulated worlds will become advanced enough to make their own simulated worlds. And so on. We might be living in a simulated world, We could be living in the simulated world of a simulated world. I'm forgetting the name of the theory right now. But the theory follows something along the lines of this. The sole reason for every single human achievement throughout history is due to our innate and deep fear of death. We are beings that think beyond just instinct and understand that every one human will cease to exist. This fear of non-existence has driven us to create everything we have made today. Kinda the opposite of the will to power theory in psychology. Neil deGrasse Tyson's greatest fear is that aliens have already found us and decided we are too primitive to be worth contacting. Just another way of saying we're not ripe enough for harvest. You could be stuck in a time loop right now and you would not be able to notice it, let alone escape it. This doesn't bother me in the slightest. If this is life infinity for me, cool. Hasn't bothered me in the slightest, and frankly I'm cool with being given a second shot. It didn't bother you the last time either. So that's good. That space is a lot like a jungle. We're basically here on Earth shouting out into the darkness with our satellites and technology. We're telling whatever might be out there exactly where we are. But in the jungle, monkeys don't try and contact tigers for good reason. We have no idea what's really out there. Most of the time, jungles are noisy places, filled with the calls of various animals. Some monkeys will even give out warning calls at the sight of a predator. There are very few things that will make a jungle go silent, or cause all of the fish on a reef to suddenly flee. None of them bode well for a careless human interloper. Let's hope space isn't like that. The Berenstein Bears theory. Go to your mom's house sometime and take a look at all those old books, and you'll see that the name is, and has always been, Berenstein, with an A. Don't you feel stupid now for misreading it throughout your whole childhood? Well, one theory states that the Berenstein dilemma is a small side effect of our universe intersecting with a parallel dimension sometime in the 90s. And everyone who remembers the bear's original surname are experiencing residual memories from another dimension. The first time I heard this I thought I was crazy because I distinctly remembered the original spelling with an E. Because I always pronounced it Berenstein. Edit, to those writing off the spelling difference as a careless discrepancy between publishers. The books were not named for the bears themselves, but rather for the authors Stan and Jan Berenstein, or Berenstein, depending on which dimension you lived in. Which means one effect of the dimensional shift that supposedly happened only a few years ago was the altering of the Berenstein family name at some point in the past. Those who remember the name with an A are simply remembering the new timeline. The scary robo-basilisk thingy. The idea that if we don't help an army to be made now when it is made, it will punish those who didn't help it and punish the ones who knew about it and decided not to help it more. So if you're reading this you could get murdered by a robot. Edit, added name so you know it's scary and you know you are dooming yourself. Instead of me dooming you etc. Definitely the great filter theory, as it makes us look like naive simpletons merrily rowing towards the edge of Niagara Falls, singing all the way. There's something extremely frightening about hubris, especially on a species-wide level. The thing with this theory is that it's extremely elegant and straightforward. This raises the fright-o-meter considerably. 2. The great filter. There's a point in societal development where most societies collapse. This is why we don't see sign of extraterrestrial life, aside from the sheer mind-bending distances. There are a finite number of patterns in the universe, and eventually they must repeat, a la monkeys and typewriters. Therefore, given enough time, the pattern of molecules and atoms that make up your physical body will repeat, bond together, and you'll wind up alive and conscious somewhere down the line. Where and when you might end up are a mystery. You could respawn on an ice planet and freeze to death, only to respawn on a volcano planet and burn to death for all eternity, or until the universe ends. The Truman Show. Never has a movie made me question my life more. Every now and then I still think, maybe I'm Truman and they made the movie to give me a hint of what's going on with my life and I need to break the wall. I always think that if I have been in a Truman Show style of experiment my whole life, it was pretty ballsy of the conductors to let me watch that movie. The Lucifer principle always is a good one to see how humans actually aren't as good as we like to think. It proposes that evil is rooted into our genetic coding as a byproduct of years of evolution and natural selection. In other words, humans exist as they do and are as successful as they are because we disregard other species' needs in order to stay at the top of the biological pecking order. So while humans always preach and boast themselves about how much they care and are sympathetic due to higher intelligence, yet disregarding that is how we came to be on top and survive. Phase shift. Everyone has heard of phase change, water turning to ice because it loses energy. Well, oddly enough, the same thing can happen to our universe. We know this because it has already happened. A short time after the Big Bang, a phase shift took place as the universe cooled. A part of the universe completely changed and destroyed the old part of the universe. This new universe then engulfed the old universe from the inside out, destroying everything and creating new laws of physics as it happened. This can potentially happen again at any time. If it does happen again, everything will be destroyed in an instant. It's possible I'm the only observer of the universe. Everything, the earth, the universe itself, the laws of physics, even people who describe identical experiences to my own, were made up by me. Whatever entity I am, who possesses awareness for an unknown reason. Consciousness is just a weird aberration in evolution. And other life in the universe may be highly intelligent, but not actually consciousness. So, even if we found out they're aliens somewhere out there, we still, in a sense, be alone. Our minds are just neurons firing off in a specific way. Every action and choice you make really isn't a choice at all. Every bad or good decision will be made no matter what. Our minds trick us into thinking we can make choices when in reality we are just another part of the universe being propelled by natural forces. I wonder if one day you die or heal yourself. Whichever. Doesn't matter. And at that moment you back away from a carnival type box that your eyes look into. Your real friends are standing there laughing because you stayed in the game for so long. Very little actual time has passed. You are butthurt because the miserable life you just experienced was a very long miserable life and they all let you live in there. And hurt. In real life it only took 5 minutes. Your friends watched and laughed at your hard times on a big screen above the carnival box that you sat at. If any of these theories are putting people through a bit of a psychological hurdle where you are asking yourself if life is even really worth living, if any of these are true, just always remember, what matters is what we perceive to matter. Even if the theory that everything else is a figment of all of our imaginations is correct, does it really matter? You are still you and you are still experiencing this simulation reality dream every day. So you might as well accept that you are a part of it and continue to live your life in the way best for you. It actually matters 0% if these theories are true. Because fake or not, your life is still your life. Even if we are in a computer simulation, there isn't much we can do about it. Might as well enjoy it while we are here and not think too hard about what could be. Not to say don't ponder and philosophize, but just don't let it get you down when you read about things like this. My favorite by far is the 5-minute hypothesis that Bertrand Russell put forth, that all things, including all memory, were all created 5 minutes ago. It's totally impossible to prove. But if you sit and think about every time you blink could have been the first time you ever actually did it, shit will keep you up at night. This will be buried, but I dated a guy who works for a company in Washington, D.C. Apparently when the House of Cards came out, a ton of political people started freaking out because the storylines are so true that they thought someone was talking. So a huge majority of them hired his company to keep them safe. The one I find the most currently concerning is gamma ray burst, GRB. We think we've seen them happen indirectly a few times in other galaxies. And they are scary. Basically, if a blue giant star, real big and hot, Top 5% goes up. It can form a GRB with a supernova. Whilst a supernova will pretty much never hit much outside a few light years, a gamma flash can easily hit across the galaxy in effective range. If a strong GRB hits Earth, the entire atmosphere is taken with a GRB and the magnetic field of the Earth fails to go over it as well, rendering us extinct in milliseconds. Could have early warning by the visible supernova, but shortly after the hit would be unstoppable. The human eye only sees in a limited spectrum of electromagnetic waves. There is a theory that certain things only reflect waves outside our spectrum. This could explain feelings of paranoia or being watched when alone, because there is something there you can't see. The monkeys fear that deep down, people can care about 500 people. If the person isn't part of your family, your friends, your community, even there are some abstractions like country but it's weaker, you can basically watch them starve and be unaffected. The theory being that people only care about their small sphere like when monkeys lived in small communities. This is why the news is always trying to connect foreign tragedies to local audience. A person in this city has family in the Philippines and are waiting for news from the latest typhoon. Because unless it's somehow in your sphere you don't care. It's a theory that depicts humanity as pretty cold.